Hi, Steve. Hi, everybody. Thank you for this opportunity to speak to you guys. I just want to check, Steve, is my slide deck showing properly before I continue?
Just click at the next slide. I don't know if it's just my view.
Okay.
It looks fine to me, Christhonie.
Okay, super. I think, okay, let's go from there. So thank you, everybody. Today, my presentation is also going to be around the API Manager, and I'm going to take a specific look about how we've implemented this product at one of our customers here in South Africa. And I will sort of share with you sort of the typical challenges that we see with our customers and that we experience with them as well, and how we manage to use the product to derive business value for our customer. So I'm going to do the presentation around sort of three role players. I first want to start off by sort of explaining what is the benefit of an API manager in terms of our business. So what are we trying to do with that? Then we'll look at the role of the API developer and how does this product assist that workflow that our staff has to go through. And then we will look from the perspective of an API consumer, the people that need to consume these APIs. So starting at the business side, so maybe let's just have a quick look about why do we think APIs are quite critical to business. So, so it's generally agreed that IT should be an enabler for business opportunities. So APIs have a strategic role to play to make those opportunities possible. So they're not merely technical tools, but they should form a key part of a product and a marketing strategy to digitally transform our organizations. In addition, they should be managed as assets for developers, allowing them to unlock new applications or ways of working to improve our business. So to drive the adoption of these assets, it is then prudent to make APIs easy to find and easy to consume and also reliable to use. So the APIs enable business to combine more multiple software systems into more holistic solutions. Systems that might be within our own organization or the software systems of some of our vendors. And it allows our customers and partners to also integrate with our solutions. Leveraging APIs are then key building blocks to also give us digital transformation strategies. So digital transformation is sort of about embracing the shift in the nature of the supply and demand. And it requires us to overhaul our organization's operational model. So it's not just about cloud or web or a mobile strategy. So APIs is also a great way to help us migrate our brick and mortar businesses to adopt omni-channel business models. So we see that a lot now with COVID happening, where more and more organizations need to rely on their digital assets to engage with their customers and make their businesses accessible. And lastly, API should make it easy to leverage our cloud strategies, which could save the business money in infrastructure costs and also aid in elasticity of our software systems. So there are quite a few benefits that we see by embracing APIs as a whole. So let's have a look at the API Manager. Where does that play a role? So API management solutions are central to managing our relationships between the APIs, our providers, and our users. So they facilitate definition and documentation of our APIs so that we can figure out what APIs are available and who can use them and when can they be accessed. So to make APIs available, we need to make them available at the edge of our network so that people can access them. And once we start doing that, there's a lot of things we need to take into consideration, like security and DNS and routing into our organization. We might want to make use of API consoles so that we can see how they work. We want to be able to touch on lifecycle management, and we would like to be able to monitor our solution and see how our APIs are performing and whether they stay within our quality of service objectives. So the customer in focus today is Flash Mobile Vending. They are a local customer for us here in Cape Town, South Africa, and they were looking at leveraging APIs better within their organization. So Flash is a fintech company where they vend prepaid electricity, airtime, or data for cell phone companies. They perform payment solutions for our digital satellite companies. They sell vouchers like Google Play vouchers. They perform money transfers from person to person. And they also provide mechanisms for us to RICA our accounts. That is a mechanism to ensure that we register the SIM card to an actual person. And Flash literally handles millions of small transactions a day. And for them, reliability and speed is of the essence. So for Flash, their journey started as Carl put it in their adolescence years. So right from the beginning, they had a view of using APIs to connect their mobile devices. And initially, this was more of an internal strategy to feed their own devices and their applications. But they realized that they need to provide a digital marketplace and an integration capability for other partners to embrace their service offerings and solutions as well. So they were looking around to find a product to use, and through one of their subsidiary companies, they were introduced to WSO2 as an API manager for their organization. And for them, it ticked all of the boxes. Flash was looking for a solution to make their APIs easy for their customers to find and integrate with, and makes it easy for their developers to provide these technical services without having to worry too much about the infrastructure and the networking side of things. For them, reliability and quality of service was quite important because of these high volumes of transactions that they use. And they needed to make sure that the solution that they pick is technically sound in that. So we got involved more than a year ago, putting down infrastructure, and Flash is busy transacting more and more of their transactions through the API manager, and they can see that there is a clear adoption of their services through such a platform. So let's have maybe a look at how this would, how the API manager would aid their API developers and what challenges they might experience. So traditionally, developers had to do a lot of work to expose APIs to the outside world. Obviously, you would start by developing software that exposes an API. And I can still recall my early engineering days where developing software using serial communications like RS-232 was used to send data from one machine to another before the days of the internet. And then came along ARCnet and Ethernet, and soon TCP, IP socket connections. And it was quite difficult to get things connected to each other. And I can still recall the days where I had to integrate with a Microsoft Exchange server that had this MAPI protocol that you could only get by signing a non-disclosure agreement and pay a lot of money. But luckily, we've moved on a lot from there, where we can now easily expose web services within our organization, whether it's RESTful or GraphQL or WebSockets. And then just the adoption of these open standards help us connect systems together and get past these barriers of these proprietary interfaces. So Flash had some similar challenges in, as I mentioned, on how to get these things out. So assuming we have developed our API using these technologies that I talked about, we need to deploy these applications now to the outside world. We will have to contend with our firewalls that we'll have to set up. We'll have to maybe set up netting on our network level or a reverse proxy to get our software connected to the outside world. We might have to go and buy SSL certificates to make sure that we can have a trusted connection. So all of these things must be considered before we can get our application going. And then we need to think about what about multiple instances of our application and multiple versions and high availability and load balancing to distribute the traffic. So some of these network challenges will even have to be reviewed by our network team, and sometimes these change requests take quite long. And obviously we have to provide some sort of a security layer within our application to make sure that when people access our applications, that they are authenticated and authorized to do so. So we have to maintain user tables and password hashing functions, and we might want to go and implement roles and permissions within our organization. Within our application, I mean. And then there's the user interface to manage those things, like when a user forgets his password and to send them a welcome email. All of these things developers had to do themselves. And during the life cycle of our application, we also need to dealing with redeployment of new hardware and maybe routing traffic to different locations, and remembering to upgrade our SSL certificate once a year. And so you can now see that a typical developer, as with Flash, had to deal with all of these type of constraints. So the life of the developer was a bit difficult. So when we look at our API manager, the API manager has a component called the API publisher, which then provides our developer with an easy access mechanism where they can access a web interface. And it's simply a question of going through the screens in order to register our API within the system. With Flash, we are using more and more CI/CD pipelines to get our APIs into our store, which is like a more automated way to get that done. We can easily configure our APIs and define and expose the structure of those so that we can feed our SAML, Swagger file or our WSDL file into the solution, and it pulls that in, and it gets us to apply our security and apply our documentation to that. So today is not a technical presentation of the product or interactive presentation. So I've just taken some screenshots to just show you from a developer's perspective how easy it could be to just get started. And I'll just show you some of the screens. At our technical session on Thursday, we will be going into these screens more interactively and answering your questions around how to perform some of these functions. But as I've got on the screen now, a very simple user interface where the developer can easily access the various options or make the technology choices for the API. And by filling in total about 3 pages of information, we can easily go and register our application, describe to the system what are we trying to do, like give our application a name and give it some sort of context, a version number, and on the security screen, we might want to go and select what type of security mechanism we want to go and implement. And at Flash, we make use of JWT tokens a lot, and access tokens, opaque access tokens, which is very commonplace to give us a secure connection between our backend systems and our clients. And the developers don't need to code anything around this. So they can be fended by a layer in front of their application that takes care of the coarse-grained security concerns that we might have. So just a summary screen of some of the settings that the API manager allows us to set then to just get us going. And on top of that, the environment supports multiple types of deployments. Like at Flash, they've got some on-site servers for their QA and their development work. They've got a private cloud infrastructure to do more load type of testing, and their public cloud where they host most of their customer-facing solutions. And no matter which one of these three environments Flash has to deal with, this is already catered for within the publisher so that the developer can simply select in which one of these environments does this API apply to, and using some of the advanced routing technologies, we can make sure that no matter where that API is exposed within their business, they get access to their backend systems. So from a developer's perspective, what have they achieved by going through these steps? So they now have a gateway that sits on the edge of their network that provides these networking features that we talked about. They will now have a consolidated asset register of all of the APIs in the store, which is the next topic we're going to talk about, which then now provides the customer with the business and technical owner contact details if they want to interact with the developers internal to the organization. Immediately, the developer gets insight into how their APIs get used, how many people have subscribed to it. They can also get a good sense of volumes. And especially when Flash started to move over to different versions of the API, the insight into who is subscribed to which version of the APIs helps them to facilitate communication to developers that still has to migrate to the latest version, because surely we don't want to run multiple versions or multiple versions at the same time. So as I mentioned now, these multiple API versions all get their own URL so that each party can specifically address the version that they coded against. So if we have a look then from the API consumer's perspective, there is then another component that come into play, the store. And typically we see that our customers, our end users that want to use our software typically has questions around, well, what sort of APIs do you have for me? Or where can I find these type of APIs? And how do they work? In the past, we used to spend quite a lot of time interacting and onboarding our new customers, where we have to have one-on-one discussions with our customer on how our APIs work and exchange example code for them. Sometimes the client also didn't know who to contact or how to write the source code, and those interactions was needed. So the developer portal basically gives our end user a quick view into all of the assets that our business has available for them to use. In the case of Flash, we even customize the API store to present a specific APIs that is for any of their various brands. So we make use of multi-tenancy so that each screen looks specific to that brand. And whether it's selling vouchers or selling airtime, we can customize the look and feel of those APIs in that store so that the customer can find that easily. They can interact with the APIs, sort of to play with them, to sort of see how they work and interact against a staging system, for instance. And most importantly, I'll show you a screenshot of that a bit later on, they are able to generate some good boilerplate starting code so that their developers can easily get going integrating with the API. And built into WSO2's support for over 20 of these languages, so that no matter whether your developer is a PHP developer or a C# developer, and whether you as the developer wrote your application in Java, it becomes easy for them to get source code that is specific to their environment, independent from the back-end implementation. So again, just a quick screenshot from one of these portals, for instance, where you can see this catalog of products that's available. So this is the standard version 3 look and feel that you have. And then for Flash, we then customize this look and feel to make sure that it fits in with the branding of the organization. And what's awesome about WSO2 is they give you this product that is sort of white labeled. So you can go in and with a little bit of HTML and CSS knowledge, you can spruce up the screen to match your specific branding and themes. So I talked about the software, the SDKs that you can generate. So by selecting an API within your store, depending on which options you make available. So in this case, we've got like 4 languages that we put on the display. And the developer can, for that specific API, can press a button and get source code that is aligned to that version of their API, as well as the security layer that is implemented behind the scenes. And it helps Flash to onboard their developers much faster than they used to in the past. Now, despite the fact that you've got the source code, you also need documentation. So Flash still spend a lot of time writing proper documentation in PDF format, where we package some screenshots and examples, and we do document how the APIs need to get used. And very often developers forget about this part of the development cycle, because an API definition like a Swagger or WSDL only gives you the static view of the API. And you only have documentation to describe the behavioral aspects of that. Like for instance, when you engage with an API, I mean, which of the fields inside a specific method call is required and under which conditions are they required? And for instance, if an error occurs, I mean, how do you deal with that? Should you retry? Should you change some of the variables? All of these must be described. So what Flash also does is they provide this high quality documentation, and then WSO2 has got this function where we can expose and attach this documentation straight within the API store. So where the user interacts with that API for the first time, the documentation is immediately available, which reduces this face time that they need to have with new customers as well. So gone are the days where I have to go through my shared drive to find that API specification I wrote 2 years ago. Everything is in the right place and easy to find. So just from a technical point of view, don't want to go into too much detail, but just want to sort of show you what we typically install within the components for an API manager. So we usually start off by providing the UI components through the publisher, and we put down for the customer the API gateway nodes. And so that is the mechanism that connects our network or the internet to our servers that we've got at the back. And we deploy components to manage our keys so that we can manage access control, and also the traffic manager that allows us the ability to control the quality of service of our API, so that when somebody maybe overuses an API, we can possibly throttle them based on the business tier that they've subscribed to. And then lastly, we put down the developer portal that I just recently talked about. So this is a typical installation of the product where you can have multiple environments, as I mentioned before, where you only need to deploy the gateway component, for instance. So at Flash, we are doing that as well, where we've got a centralized installation of the publisher in the store, and they are multi-tenanted so that we can brand it to each of the business units. And wherever the back-end software solution is, we deploy gateways in that specific environment, whether it's our on-prem or cloud installation, for them to then facilitate the access to the API. In Flash's case, they also combine the API manager with the enterprise integrator. So very often we've put little transformation or mediation flows between our API manager and our backend systems, because the legacy systems that they have was not conducive to the sort of restful look and feel that we wanted at the API layer. So in their specific case, without them having to change their legacy backend systems, we put some transformation layer on top of the old systems so that we can get the desired outcome in terms of the APIs and the structure of those APIs that we wanted to expose. And this was quite a common pattern for getting the legacy systems going in, as quick as possible on the public facing side. And obviously over time, as you evolve your software, you might want to go incorporate those improvements directly into your software if it is possible in future versions. And also with them, as Stefano mentioned, we can also integrate these systems with our identity management system. And here specifically, we make use of WSO2's identity server to provide federated identity management and single sign-on for their users to their Azure identity management solution. Because all of their in-house staff is provisioned on Azure, but the public users, that the people that use our APIs, we provision within the identity server itself. So it gives us this mechanism of supporting these multiple identity providers simultaneously. So just at a high level, we'll look at this a bit more in our technical session. Behind the scenes, there's a lot of things that happen within the API manager, where we've got multiple transports that we can support. We mentioned the security, the throttling, the analytics. We have got some on-demand components that we can also employ through the ESB that I mentioned, and then mechanisms on how to get these message formatters and transports out back to our backend system. So that's just a quick visualization of that. So just to sum up, so what was now the purpose of them adopting the API manager? So we can clearly see that the developers have increased the cadence at which they can roll out software, which is good for business. The developers no longer need to deal with the infrastructure changes that we mentioned about. We've now assured that all of the APIs, even on the legacy systems, have got proper industry standard security mechanisms or access control bolted on top of them, and it's consistent across all of the software solutions that they are exposing. Their consumers can now find their products much easier, and business is getting more insight into how their customers are using their products. Flash seem to be very happy with their infrastructure, and we can clearly see how it's benefiting their business. Steve, I think that concludes my presentation. Thank you for that. As we mentioned, I'm going to give over to you, and I think we're going to deal with the questions a bit later on there.
Sonny, thanks very much. That was awesome, and it certainly brought it all together quite nicely. I think maybe it was cool that we had Stefano take over in second spot there, because I could see the connections flow through very well. I also think that one of the key elements that I took from what you were talking about is how you helped us focus on the business, the developer, and the consumer, and I think that's often areas where businesses don't get it right, because it's sort of, I think historically, maybe come more from the tech side, the developer side. He's trying to solve, or he or she is trying to solve the problem. But there's actually quite a broad spectrum in terms of that stakeholder community. And the successful businesses are the ones that are managing to balance all the stakeholders in terms of how they take this forward. And then the other thing that I picked up was around scale. And if I looked at what both you and Stefano have presented to us, it really is the essence of scalability. You know, if you don't have much going on in the digital space and the API space, then fine, you can get away with things. But when you launch into genuine scale, you're going to have this sort of tooling at your disposal. And I think that's just the reality of a digital future.
Business is moving so fast, Steve, that you need these tools to help you keep up with the pace. And whether it's for your developers or for your customers, we need clever tools for us to grow our business fast. Especially now where a lot of us need to pull up our socks in terms of our digital offering to keep up with what's happening in the world today.
Thank you. Paul, would you like to perhaps trigger a wrap? I don't think there's a lot of questions that have come through yet, so I'd maybe encourage anyone to send any questions on the chat if they do have. But Paul, I'll let you just trigger a wrap for us.
Yeah, I mean, I have to say, I I thought this was a great session. I really enjoyed Christhonie's session. I really enjoyed Stefano's session, and obviously I hope my session kind of set the ground rules for this. And I think, I think that what we saw there was exactly what we described. So what Flash are doing is effectively creating a digital product. They're driving it through APIs, and what you said we were aiming to do here today was to sort of bridge the high level vision with the reality, and I think that absolutely happened. So Christhonie really went through the details of what made it important for Flash, what brought in what the capabilities were that they needed to do that, to create these digital products, to create API products, and I think Stefano really nicely kind of gave the high level view of the product. The roadmap, I think, is really important. One of the things that so I've worked a lot with a guy called Vinny Smith who founded Quest Software and is one of the investors in WSO2, and he always says, that buying software is an investment in the future. You're not just buying the product where it is today. You're buying a sort of hopefully a vision that this is taking you forward, that this is taking you and your business where you need to go. And I really hope that today's session has shown that we don't just aim to meet the requirements of today. We've got a strong vision of where the world is going, of what opportunities there are out there, and how we can enable them. And I'm a really firm believer that this is kind of just as important as where the product is today and what it can do for you today is, where are we taking it? What's the vision? Why are we here? And we strongly believe that, we're just at the start of understanding where the new business models are. I think Flash is a great example of a new business model that wouldn't really be possible without digital technology. But as I covered it quite quickly, but as I covered with those 5 different multi-party business models, we're starting to see new capabilities emerge and new opportunities, and this is just opening up everyone's eyes, not just to the technology but to the business that you can build on top of it. So I hope this has been a great starter session, and I don't want to just wrap up. I want to also encourage you to join in the detailed technical session on Thursday, but also to hear the vision of our kind of ideas around customer identity access management, and all kinds of cool aspects that are coming in next week, and then in the following sessions. So I hope this has been a good start, but I'm really keen that this is just the start of an excellent interactive virtual session.
Apologies, I was on mute there. Thank you. And in fact, that leads me nicely in just to, well, maybe before I do that, I just want to check if Christhonie or Stefano, if there's anything that you want to add to that before I close.
No, thank you. I think Paul perfectly sum up the 3 sessions.
Thank you, Stefano.
And I think it's for me exciting to get to be involved and to hear, and I'm still looking forward to listen to the other presentations that we're going to have next week and the week thereafter. And Stefano and Paul, thanks for your contribution as well.
Okay, so let me just share my screen and just do the close. It'll be very short. Into presentation mode. So, like Paul was saying, there is still the deep dive session that we're hosting on Thursday. So, I'm hoping that you'll be able to participate in this event all the way through the series. 6th of August is really where we close it out, and our final deep dive session on the Thursday the 6th, and Tuesday the 4th being the, what have I done? Sorry, I'm on the wrong slide here. Tuesday the 4th being the last primary session. So that's the sort of calendar once again. So hopefully pick you up on the 21st of July. And then, like I said, we'll skip that 28th and then do the last ones on the 4th and the 6th of August. In that session next week, Tuesday, our sort of client view is a very exciting business. And I think those of us in South Africa are seeing traction in the space of a time bank. And you know, they certainly are on the right side of the current circumstances, having gone exclusively digital as a business. So we look forward to unpacking the identity and access management side of that. And for those that have gotten into this space, you will realize that, you know, APIs don't come, as Christhonie said, without integration. It doesn't come without identity and access management. These things all, you know, cloud, etc. They're all packaged together at the end of the day. So they're all key components of a comprehensive platform. So as I mentioned, Prabhath is going to sort of keynote for us, and we're really excited to have him on board as the VP of the Identity and Access Management business unit. Our Johnny Lewis will be back with us. He's been along the time journey from the outset, so that's really cool. And many of you that have dealt with us for some time know about Johan, who's a solution architect on the Identity Server product. So he'll take over from Stefano. We haven't lost the global effect, so still a Cape Town and Joburg representation, but this time we're going to go a lot more east and a lot more west. So Johan will join us from Sri Lanka, a little dot down there below India, for those that haven't been. I suggest you go sometime once COVID is past. And then all the way at some ridiculous hour of the morning will be Prabhath joining us from California. And so that's it. Enjoy the rest of your day. I hope that you enjoyed the session. Reach out to us if there's anything that you need. Otherwise, we'll catch you on Thursday. Ciao, ciao.